thought about sharing this information. It's from a sewing machine from the 50s. I'll show in a moment which one. But it's interesting, this kind of information about electric oil motors, which these are the modern motors. So it's not older ones with wick or some sort of I think Vaseline or paraffin lubricants. So these are the motors that come with regular brass bushes as motor bearings. And this is information that this manufacturer, which is a Bernina, is going to be Switzerland from the 50s, 60s. So these are modern motors. This is the manufacturer suggestion for oiling the bushes of the motor. It says that the motor was already oiled at the factory, but that's not for a lifetime. And I believe, many believe, that the oil bushes need not to be lubricated. We are talking about vintage machine, but actually it's the same for modern machines. I let you pause and read here. I just comment on these bearing bushes on electric motors, modern or relatively vintage from 50 years ago. These bushes are simply cylinders that run inside a bored cylinder. So there's no bearing balls, no grease, nothing like this. It's just a friction surface. And yes, these surfaces are very smooth when new, and they are made to run against each other without much friction, without much wear, even if it's not oiled, lubricated. However, in time, especially when it's constantly being used, not just infrequent use. If you're just using a sewing machine very rarely, maybe not, don't worry about this. But if you are using it every week, a few hours or so, every month, 5-10 hours or so, then you need to know that those bushes do wear. The tolerance between the two components, the two cylinders, does increase. It's not going to prevent the motor from running, but at some point it may become more noisy, and also at some point that interface between the two metallic parts, actually there is two sets of bushes, one on each end of the motor shaft, the interface becomes more rough. So the metal is wearing, fine metal particles get stuck in between the two cylinders, and they start wearing even more so the surfaces that are in contact, and these surfaces become more rough, less smooth, and that does reduce the motor speed, especially the maximum speeds. But also after long interval, at some point that wear will be such there will be vibrations, and at some point, of course, the motor will stop working at all altogether. So just think of it, it's a very slow wearing component, but there is wear. That's why myself, I prefer to use engine oil instead of sewing machine oil, because sewing machine oil, it's much more light and it does lubricate very nice. However, if usually access to those brushes, we don't see it here, it's encased, access to those brushes is very difficult. And by the way, it's very important not to oil too much. Oftentimes the oil will leak on the pulley that's running the belt. So careful not to put just a tiny amount that goes into the brush. And I like to incline the machine so the oil leaks into the brush, not onto the front pulley. This is for the front bushes. So I was saying, sewing machine oil does actually not last forever. It does sort of evaporate after a long period, perhaps we can say 1 year, but it's going to depend on room temperature as well. Warmer temperature is going to evaporate faster, and it doesn't last. You need to reapply it. That's why they say here to keep applying about every year or so, depends how much you use the machine. But that's why I like to use engine oil, just from hardware store, like regular car, vehicle, gasoline engine oil. but not mineral oil, synthetic oil. It's very important, this part, because the mineral oil will heat up because of friction between the bushes parts, and will cook in time, will cause varnishing inside the two bushes, and that will prevent rotation at some point. So synthetic oil is much more resistant. Go only true synthetic oil, not blend, not other fancy names, just full synthetic on the bottle. Could be, I prefer 0W20 or 0W10. The 0 is basically the viscosity that has the oil at room temperature. The 0 part, the first number, the lower the better, because those oils are already pretty viscous. So you want one that's less viscous. 0W anything is going to work for you, small amount. And if you manage to oil the bushes with just really a tiny amount, a droplet, if you are sure you got the droplet on the bushes, you will see at least the front bush by the small pulley for the belt. Then just a tiny droplet, it's plenty enough, because the tolerance, the space between the two cylinder is very small, so it takes a very small amount of oil. If you are not sure, you can put more, but it's important, just like they say here, the motor has at the front brushes which make the electrical contact. Those brushes are fairly close to the front bushes, which is close to the small pulley. So on that area, just a tiny amount of oil, and just incline, put backwards the machine, put it on its side, on its butt if you want, on its back area, just so make sure the droplet leaks in there. For the other, I think I have a video maybe on my channel, perhaps I have a video where I show how to lubricate the rear bush, which is oftentimes inside an enclosure, you cannot remove it from there. You just put a tiny wire with a tiny droplet, with a flashlight, you look, and there is usually some grids for ventilation, and you try to aim at the bush inside. Yes, so that's the reason I'm doing this video, and this will just have your machine work for even longer. Why not? Because this machine, vintage one, are very, very well done when it's all metal, and you want to keep them going for as long as possible.